Hello, my name is Clayton, and welcome to another episode of the Watch Dog Podcast. I'm a professional dog runner and watch enthusiast talking to his pals about dogs and watches. How's everyone doing? Thank you so much for listening. You know I appreciate it. Yeah, Monday mornings just aren't going to happen. Sorry it's late. My weekends have been so busy. I just don't have time to record, so expect the podcast Monday evening, Tuesday morning, God forbid Tuesday evening like last week. You'll get it. Trust me. Just not sure, what time of day on Monday or Tuesday, but you'll get it. I promise you. Thanks for sticking with me. I appreciate you. You know that. And just checking in. How's everybody's summer going so far? It's half over. Oh, man, it's already the middle of July. How did that happen? I hope you're doing fun things. We've had a pretty low-key summer, as busy as I've been, my goodness, but pretty low-key in terms of, doing a whole lot of stuff. The highlight probably has been Memorial Day weekend. My buddy Mario and I traveled down to Philadelphia to see Metallica on their No Repeat Weekend tour in support of the album 72 Seasons. I think this is the third summer of this tour. We went Friday night, and then my buddy Mario is in the Metallica fan club, and he entered a drawing for us to get into the Snake Pit. Now, I don't know if you've seen what Metallica's stage looks like. They play in the round. It looks like a racetrack, and they walk around the stage the whole show. And there are fans in the middle of the stage. Now, those tickets are super expensive. It's called the Snake Pit. We would never pay to be in there, but lo and behold, we found out we won the drawing. So on the Sunday night show, we were in the Snake Pit. Pantera opened. We got some really cool pictures of Zakk Wylde. I was flowing locks. I got some really cool photos. And then, of course, Metallica. I mean, we were so close. I mean, it was incredible. Incredible weekend. We also made a vow to eat nothing but cheesesteaks for breakfast, lunch, and dinner the entire weekend, much to our arteries' chagrin. But, I don't know if Philadelphia is known for cheesesteaks the world over, but certainly the United States, that's what they're famous for. So we hit 9 or 10 different spots. I must say, Philadelphia is also known for roast pork sandwiches, and I prefer those to cheesesteaks. But, I gained 5 pounds that weekend, and here we are a month and a half, almost 2 months later, I still can't lose it. So that means it was fun. But anyway, yes, whether you're gorging yourself on cheesesteaks or living at the beach this summer, I certainly hope you're having a wonderful time. And of course, now that we're in July, that means we are in the second half of 2025 already. That gets me thinking about my watch collection. Well, everything gets me thinking about my watch collection, but in particular, which watches I'm wearing. I know I've seen a few YouTubers do like state of the collection or most worn watches so far in 2025, and I think about that stuff as well. Now, I am sure, since you are all watch geeks, that you catalog which watches you wear. I like to write them down. I wear 2 watches per day. I wear one for work, a G-Shock or my Shinola. And then in the afternoon, I come home and put one of my, nicer watches on for the evening. I am a Luddite. I still prefer to write down in a calendar the watches I wear and then add them up at the end of the month, end of the year. That is how I prefer to do it. I have 25 to 30 dogs every day for my off-leash group excursion business. I do not keep a schedule in a calendar app. It's just much easier for me to have a physical calendar where I can add dogs in, cross them off if they cancel. Just on the fly. I'm always in a rush, always in a hurry. That's just easier for me personally. My friend Craig created a really cool spreadsheet to track which watches he wears. And of course, spreadsheets do all the math for you. He's got it broken down to like half days. He sent it to me. I tried. I just can't stick with it. But I think I have finally found something on my phone that I will use to track which watches I wear. I'm in a Slack group, and I think that's where I heard about it. Somebody mentioned the app Wrist Track. I know it's on Android. I'm an Android guy. I'm assuming it's on iOS as well. And it's basically an app where you can track which watches you wear. I ended up paying for the Pro version, Wrist Track Pro. It is a free app to use. Obviously, Pro unlocks some features. I thought it was pretty reasonable. There are 3 different payment plans, and they all get you the same amount of features. It's just how generous you're feeling. I think it's a passion project of one guy. That's the impression I get. I think there's a $3.99, a $6.99, and a $9.99. I went for the $6.99. But yeah, I'm in it now, so let's take a look real quick. I thought this might interest people. I know everybody who tracks their watches is always looking for some sort of interesting app to do it. On the Pro anyway, it has a clock. So you can also sync up your watches. I'm assuming it's synced to the atomic time, so you can keep track of how your watches are running as well. But yeah, let's get in here. So I'm in my collection now, as I bump the microphone. I'm in my collection now. Let's take a look at the Seiko SNR 045. Of course, you can upload a photo of the watch, and it says manufacturer, Seiko, model SNR 045, diver, serial number if you want to put that, movement if you want to put that. And then there's basically a tab, wear this watch today. You press that and it logs the wear. Now, let's say you just download the app and you've been wearing a watch all year and you want to go back in time. You can do that. There's a calendar, you click on it, and then you go back July, June, May, April, and you can long press on the day and it logs a wear on that day. So looks like since I got this watch in April, I have worn it 40 times, the Seiko SNR 045. Like I said, it's quickly becoming a favorite in my collection. So I'm loving this. You can go to, then there's other features as well. Value. You can put the price in. So I purchased this watch for $3,500. My cost per wear after wearing it 40 times, $87.50. I love that. I think that's neat. Then you can go into Pro data. You can put in the diameter, lug width, lug to lug, case thickness, water resistance, case material. Then there are some other features as well, including like a wrist recap. It says, note, this feature is currently in beta and will be enhanced over time. Please consider it a work in progress. Looks like you have to be using the app for 30 days before you can register a wrist recap. But if you end up using this app for a couple years, you can select a year, and it looks like it'll give you a breakdown of the watches you wore that year. So I don't have to go through my physical calendar and add them up anymore, which is awesome. In this app, anyway, I don't have to go and delete all my watches and start over again with the count. This wrist recap feature will, log what I wear all year and give me a quick breakdown of 2026, 2027, if I use it that long. So really just thought it was an interesting app. Again, I'm not getting paid by Wrist Track. They don't know I exist. This is not a paid promotion, just something I thought was really cool. If you don't feel like paying for the app at all, you can still get many of the features just for free. But I don't know. For a one-time fee of $3.99 or $6.99, I thought it was worth my money to upgrade and get some of this other stuff. So I'll put a link to it in the show notes if I can. I think it is a worthwhile download in my opinion. Okay, let's get to the main topic today. And as you can tell, my allergies are killing me, so bear with me, please. Has your favorite band ever taken a drastic left turn in musical direction for an album or two, or maybe for the rest of their career? Has it left you scratching your head like, what happened to the band I first got into, so many years ago? Where maybe you just, don't identify with that music anymore. They lost the plot. Like Fonzie, they jumped the shark. I can think of a few instances with some bands I love. And I'm not necessarily opposed to bands doing that. That doesn't mean I always like the material. I think bands should follow, and any artist really, should follow artistic direction and not really care what anyone else thinks. I think at the end of the day, you make it for you. Even though many people like it and you make a lot of money doing it, you have to put your heart and soul into the material. So anyway, I think that's very important for artists, musicians, whatever it might be. So I've always been a huge fan of the band Queen. Well, since I was about 12 or 13, I hate to admit it, but I got into Queen through Wayne's World. I mean, I'd heard We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions. I think earlier that summer I liked the song Headlong, but I never really put much thought into who sang those songs. We Will Rock You just seemed like it always existed to me. You know, watching sports when I was a little kid in the 80s, you just always heard We Will Rock You. You know, it's still to this day, you do. And then when Bohemian Rhapsody was featured in Wayne's World, I went to see that movie with my sister, and the headbanging scene, I was blown away. I was like, what is this song? You know, I'd never heard it before that I could remember, which I'm ashamed to admit. But hey, I was 12, 13 into different things. I was more of a hair metal guy when I was young, from 6 or 7 on. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But anyway, I delved into all things Queen. It was right after, I think that was released in like 92. And at the end of 1991, Queen's lead singer, Freddie Mercury, passed away. And they had a tribute concert for him that spring. Wayne's World was huge. Bohemian Rhapsody was back on the charts, was the #1 song again. And yeah, I dove into their back catalog. I went from the beginning. I got my hands on every tape and CD I possibly could. And then one day I bought the album Hot Space from 1982. Now, Queen have always been a band that explores different genres. Probably one of my all-time favorite albums is Queen's 1976 record, A Night at the Opera. I think that album has about 7 or 8 genres of music built into the record. I mean, there's everything on there. Queen told the world they will not be pigeonholed into one genre of music. I mean, there's like prog fantasy. There's heavy metal, there's hard rock, there's vaudevillian, there's folk. A song called 39, sounds like a folk song. Love songs on there. I mean, there's everything on there for everybody. So fans from that point on, and even with their earlier stuff, recognize that this band is going to surprise us every album. They're going to try something new every single time. With The Game in 1980, they started exploring like funkier stuff. Like Another One Bites the Dust was their biggest hit up to that point, and it's sort of, disco was waning in 1980, 1981, 1982, but, you know, they went that route with Another One Bites the Dust. So I imagine, I, of course, was only 3 years old in 1982 when Hot Space came out, but I imagine longtime Queen fans who do prefer the, you know, hard rock side, Queen can definitely go there. They can rock out with the best of them. But like I said, they do a lot of other things as well. But even for Queen fans, Hot Space was a sharp left turn in a direction that I don't think a lot of fans cared for. It was dance, funk, disco. I've barely listened to it. I bought it because it had Under Pressure on it, but really those were recorded in separate sessions. Those other songs too, Under Pressure. Under Pressure is obviously one of their great songs. And of course, at that time as well, Vanilla Ice was using the beat for Ice Ice Baby. So there was a lot happening with Queen in the early 90s when I got into them. But yeah, it's an album that is mostly regarded as being pretty bad in terms of Queen fans. And I don't think the band really likes it. There was the bassist, John Deacon, who laid down the funky bass beats on that record, and on Another One Bites the Dust. He actually wrote Another One Bites the Dust. He was pulling the band in that direction, and I think Freddie was with him a little bit, but the other two members, Brian May and Roger Taylor, were not having it. And as you may or may not know, their next album, The Works, was back to basics, rock and roll for the most part. I think it killed America for Queen. They had toured for The Game. They were on Saturday Night Live playing Crazy Little Thing Called Love. And then Hot Space came out, and I think disco was dead here in America, and that killed America for Queen. They never toured America again. And okay, so I was too young to really live through the Hot Space thing, but I did live through another drastic left turn with one of my favorite bands, Metallica. I was a little kid in the 80s. I was born in 79. So, you know, late 80s, I was 8, 9, 10. We had MTV. So I loved all that stuff. I just gravitated to harder, heavier music. I had a friend, his brother was older than us, and we would steal his tapes when he wasn't home. And Metallica, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets. I was introduced to that stuff at a very early age, and I loved it. I loved every second of it. They hadn't really done music videos, so when One was released as a video from their album And Justice for All in 1988, I mean, it was just a scary video. I was kind of scared to watch it. I was 9, 10 years old. They looked scary. They looked like rock gods in this video, and the subject matter is very dark. I didn't quite understand it, but I knew it was scary. So they were just this menacing metal band. If you listen to that album, it's proggy, it's technical. You don't hear much bass. That's a controversial topic around And Justice for All. But then in 1991, they came out with the Black Album. They toned down the technicality, easier songs to digest for a mass population. And even then, I still loved the Black Album. Sure, it had songs like Nothing Else Matters, which is a love song. I liked it. I didn't really think anything of it. I know hardcore Metallica fans think Metallica was done after the first 4. Starting with the Black Album, they quote-unquote sold out, right? They wrote more radio-friendly songs that could appeal to more people. I think that album is still like in the top 200 charts or something. It's incredible. It still sells a lot every week, even though people don't seemingly buy music anymore. I think that album still does really well, obviously. And you go and see them like I did, and they still play many songs from it. They close with Enter Sandman. They do The Unforgiven. They do Nothing Else Matters. They do Wherever I May Roam, Sad But True. I mean, that was just a huge album for them. So they released that in 91. They didn't release another album until 1996. Now, for a lot of those 80s bands, the 90s were tough. Grunge came in and sort of wiped out all the hair, all the makeup. Metallica definitely wasn't a glam band or a hair metal band. But still, you know, metal had sort of changed as well. Pantera was popular, even though they started as a glam band, actually. They were a more like hard edge sound that was fit for the 90s, I think, and they were popular at the time. But metal and rock, for the most part, had changed. Grunge was just a different sound. And in the mid-90s, you know, that was all the rage. Bands like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains had started taking over the charts. So a band like Metallica was just sort of lost. Like, okay, it's been 5 years since our last album. I think they toured on the Black Album forever as well. So what do we do? Where do we go from here? And, you know, I think many fans would have hoped it would just be more of the same. Let's gravitate back towards And Justice for All and maybe not in the same direction the Black Album was going. But instead, in 96, they come out with an album called Load. Definitely, I would say grunge influenced, kind of bluesy, nothing really thrash metal about it whatsoever. There's even like a country-ish song on there called Mama Said. And fans, and I was even confused. Like, I loved the Black Album. I bought Load the day it came out. And then you open the CD and you see the sleeve, and they've also changed their look, which I think was even more controversial at the time than the change in musical direction, right? They had short hair. Instead of like black t-shirts, they were wearing like cigar smoking jackets. Their hair was short. They were wearing makeup. Who are these guys? Yeah, it was really jarring to see them looking like that. And then, you know, you play the CD and it opens with a couple heavier songs, but it really just takes a different musical direction than any Metallica fan had ever heard before. And, you know, I still maintain they had to do that. Whether it was calculated or whether it was what they are feeling. I think Load has some of the most personal lyrics that James Hetfield, the lead singer, rhythm guitarist, and lyricist of Metallica, has ever written. I mean, I think it's a beautifully written album. I think some of the songs, Bleeding Me is one of my favorite Metallica songs ever. But it was definitely a different direction. Do you think fans would have felt a little different about it if it were like a side project? Maybe a few of the members, because it was really the brainchild of Kirk Hammett and Lars Ulrich. They really pushed not only the music, but also kind of the look, the change in look, the hair cutting, the makeup, all that. They're wearing like eyeliner and stuff. It was strange time. And Metallica sort of really went that way for a while, away from what they had been. But I think you have to do that to grow, right? So I may not love everything that a band does, but I respect it because I think you can't stay stuck. Now, it works for some bands. AC/DC and Slayer, every album pretty much sounds like a version of the one they released last, right? And I think fans love that. But not every artist wants to do that. Some artists want to branch out and try different things. But do you think an album like Load or Hot Space from Queen would have been better received if it were like a side project, right? Maybe you just change your name and you release an album that's kind of grungy if you're Metallica in the mid-90s. Try something different. Maybe it's just a few of the members even, and you try some other musicians to reach a new audience, to branch out a little bit. I don't think it's fair for a band to have to do that, but I think it would probably be better received if they did that, right? Queen, same thing. Maybe Freddie Mercury and John Deacon put a band together in the early 80s and release a disco pop funk record, right? Even though it's those two members, it's not using the band name Queen. And fans can disassociate it from Queen. Okay, those guys did that thing. I didn't like it. But when they come back to Queen, they're Queen. They'll do what Queen has always done, right? And same thing, Metallica could have done that in the 90s. And there's been a lot of side projects in music for that exact reason. Musicians can branch out, try other things. Not everybody just likes heavy metal if you're a heavy metal musician. You like all kinds of music. A lot of us like all kinds of music. So it's a chance for musicians to spread their wings, but not alienate the fan base of their main band. Alex Skolnick, he's the lead guitarist in a thrash metal band called Testament. They're one of if the big four is Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, and Anthrax, Testament is like the big eight. They're in that next group. I've seen them live. Alex Skolnick is just a shredder on guitar, amazing musician, but he likes jazz music. So he has a jazz trio, actually, and they're very good. But can you imagine if he told the guys in Testament, hey, I'm playing a lot of jazz lately. I think we should do a jazz record, or we should put a couple jazz songs on the next Testament album. I mean, Testament is heavy. I don't think the guys would go for it, right? And neither would the fans. The fans would riot. So he has an outlet in the Alex Skolnick trio where he can play jazz. And the fans don't hold it against him. They may even go and check it out. He may turn some Testament fans on to new music for them. There's been countless side projects. Dave Grohl has done many. Foo Fighters are sort of like a pop rock band, but he's done metal. He's done Probot with a bunch of metal guys, including Lemmy from Motorhead. He's done Them Crooked Vultures. He's done several that branch out a little different, that maybe those styles wouldn't be right for Foo Fighters, but he can go and do that on his own and then come back to the Foo Fighters, right? Yeah, side projects. A lot of watch brands are starting to do side projects as well. I got it back to watches. Took me a little while, but I got us back there. Grönefeld, and I'm butchering that pronunciation, I am sure. If you've never heard of them, they are independent hot horology at its finest, piloted by the horological brothers Bart and Tim Grönefeld, award-winning watchmakers known for exquisite finishing, some of the best in the business, not only cases, but also movements. I mean, these watches are starting at about $35,000 and up. Made to order. Made special to order. And if you go on their website, orders are closed. So really the only opportunity for you to get one now is pre-owned. I know 1916 has them quite often. There are some ADs, Oster Jewelers, I found, carries Grönefeld, and I'm sure some other ADs do as well. I mean, the tippy top of luxury, independent, hot horology. I've never had the pleasure of handling one in person. I hope to one day. I'm not sure I know anybody with a Grönefeld. If you have one and you're listening, you're probably listening to a much better podcast than this, if you have such exquisite taste. But hey, if you have one, send me some pictures. Maybe we can work something out. I can check it out. Anyway, I digress. Yes, they released a side project recently. Last year, the end of last year, I think, November, December, Grøne, in a watch called the Manueel One. Now, it looks like Manueel, but I've watched videos of the brothers themselves talking about the brand, and they pronounce it Manueel. So that's how I'm going to pronounce it. Manueel sounds sort of weird. Manueel. The Manueel One, they started with Jeff's One, named after their father. Again, I'm so sorry for butchering the names. That sold out really fast, 300 pieces. Now, this is an opportunity for you to get something touched by the Grönefeld Brothers that does not cost as much as a luxury car. I don't know what cars cost these days. Maybe a Camry and a Honda cost $35,000. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, that's just to get in. That's entry level. I mean, we're talking upwards of $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 for some Grönefeld pieces. Now, are they worth it? I mean, with the exquisite finishing and the movements and the dials. I mean, if someone's willing to pay, and obviously orders are closed, so plenty of people are willing to pay. Hey, a watch is worth whatever somebody is willing to pay for it. So if you value independent hot horology, then hey, they're worth every penny. I know the finishing's not going to be as good, right? Nowhere near. And they're using Sellita movements, SW210. I kind of thought about buying one when they were released in November, December, but they sold out very fast. I mean, I wasn't a serious buyer. One came up on Topper a couple months later, and I was very close to buying it. I just love the way it looked. It has a salmon tremblage inner dial, and then a rhodium-plated outer ring, diamond-cut indices that kind of hang over just a bit over the center dial. It was just a really classy looking watch. Like I said, I've been drawn to dress watches, even though I'm out in the woods every day. Divers really suit my lifestyle more than dress watches, that's for sure. But I don't know. I'm just more and more drawn to dressy type watches. You can dress this down, but it's dressy. Anyway, I went for it, and it was already taken. I clicked on it. I was hemming and hawing, but as I was hemming and hawing, somebody went in and swooped in and bought it on Topper's website. So in May, I was super excited to learn that they were coming out with another model, the Manueel One, but this time they were named after the brothers. The first one was named after their father, who was an inspiration for them to get into watchmaking. I believe their grandfather was a watchmaker as well. As a tribute to their father, they did the first one, and now they were doing Bart's One and Tim's One. Tim's One was monochrome, like rhodium-plated outer dial, and then like a gray inner dial with that tremblage brushing, beautifully done. Same style as the first one. And then Bart's One was all salmon. Salmon inner dial, salmon outer dial. And that really spoke to me. Blued hands. I've never had a salmon watch before. I've been a salmon admirer, but never really found the right one. And I found out like a week before that these were going on sale, and there were 150 of each. And this would be, they said, the final edition of the Manueel One. So I said, okay, I'm going to try. I figured they'd sell out really fast. But, I set an alarm. I said, okay, I'll go on there, and, reasonably priced as well. Worked out to be about $2,400 USD. And then I had to pay some duties and stuff like that. We'll get into that a little later. But yeah, the morning came and I went on and I was able to get one just like that. It is modeled after their 1941 Principia. Looks very similar, very interesting case, really neat bevels and edges. And like I said, the dial is spectacular to look at. Not a hand-finished movement whatsoever. It is a Sellita SW210, as I mentioned. They did play with the torque a little bit to make it a pleasure to wind. It was not up to their winding specifications. It is a hand wind watch, manual wind. So they wanted it to be a smooth winding watch, and it certainly is. I got the watch in. I have been wearing it. It's thin. It's very visually interesting. It does look like the 1941 Principia. Not exactly, but the case, you can see where they got the inspiration. The crown has a similar design, and actually the crown has a Grönefeld logo. So, hey, I'm cheating here, right? We're going to get into that here in a little bit, right? So why did they start Grüne as an offshoot of their Grönefeld brand, right? We talked a little bit about it with bands. They're experimenting, right? They want to reach a new audience. Grönefeld, like I said, the watches start at about $35,000. How do you think a Grönefeld collector would feel if all of a sudden the brothers came out and said, you know what, we're going to offer Grönefeld watches for $2,000? They might feel betrayed. They might feel like it devalues their very expensive watch that they paid a lot of money for, that was supposed to be exclusive, right? Not many people can afford these very expensive watches. And now you're offering them for $2,000. I'm out. I'm out of the brand. I mean, gosh, we've seen collaborations, the Omega Moonswatch. A lot of people felt like it devalued their Speedmaster, even though that didn't end up being true. But yeah, I understand that, right? Again, like fans of Queen when Hot Space came out, or Metallica fans when the Black Album and when Load came out. They felt a little betrayed. Now it's a little different being a fan of a band versus paying $50,000 for a watch, right? You do not want to upset people that spend that much money with you. Now, we invest in bands, right? We don't really buy music anymore. I know some people do, but by and large, I don't think most of us buy music anymore. But, I forked over a lot of money Memorial Day weekend to go and see Metallica. Hotel, tickets, food, my God, parking, merchandise. Bought a couple shirts while I was there. It adds up. So while it may not be $50,000, we do invest in our favorite bands, and they bring us back to special times. We may have memories associated with certain songs from high school or our first love or, whatever it might be, a family member that maybe isn't with us anymore who loved that band as much as I did or got me into that band, right? So there is a connection there. They realize that, they have to kind of stay in their lane, even though they can be artistically creative. They kind of have to stay in their lane a little bit. Load was a test, I think. Maybe not intentionally, but it definitely tested the audience. And I think a lot of people look back now, 29 years later, and okay, we liked Load, but at the time it was jarring. It was a lot. It was a lot to take in. But what did the Black Album do with more radio-friendly songs like Nothing Else Matters and Enter Sandman, and even songs like Unload, like Until It Sleeps or King Nothing? It brought a new audience that maybe was not into the extreme thrash metal that you found on earlier Metallica records. And Justice for All is an angry album, and it's heavy, and it's fast. They were mourning the death of their original bassist, Cliff Burton. It was an angry record. One was on MTV, and I'm not sure if it was on the radio at the time, but it was certainly on MTV. And, I think by their own words, they got sick and tired of playing that stuff because it was really hard to play live. It was super technical, and they were like 8 to 10 minute songs, almost exclusively on And Justice for All. They looked up at the audience, and they were bored, twiddling their thumbs. So they made it a little more tight of a package, a little more polished, perhaps, and it reached a new audience. And that's why Bart and Tim Grönefeld decided to do Gröne. I'm going to read to you a little bit from their website on why they created this, if you will, side project brand. The brand Gröne represents the brothers' heartfelt connection to heritage and a commitment to accessibility. It honors the rich watchmaking traditions of Grönefeld. Gröne wants to connect with the younger generation of watch collectors through its story and history. I'm probably saying it a bunch of different ways. I apologize. I'm going to say Grüne from now on. By intertwining the stories of its origins and their signature design, it invites current and new watch collectors to experience the soul of the watches. Then they explain where the name of the brand came from. In the early days, our friends always called us Grøne Boys or Grøne Brothers. The name Grüne is a nickname for Grönefeld. The name was also printed on Bart's windsurf harness. It is written as Grüne with a slash in the O, which is more like a Norwegian or Scandinavian O rather than the Dutch way. That O is pronounced as U, Grüne. In the French word blue, yes. So in Grönefeld, there's actually an umlaut, but this has the O with the slash in it. Then it says the Grönefeld Brothers are award-winning watchmakers with an impressive trophy case, including multiple GPHG awards and other awards as well for the next generation. And this is where the parallels come into what kind of Metallica did, whether they meant to or not, right? When we first thought of creating Grüne, we wanted to get the younger generation into mechanical watches. We feel that mechanical watches, especially manual winding ones, really have a heart and a soul, and we want to share that with the next generation. For us, this is like creating a baby. When our own babies, our children aged 16 to 20 years old, came to see the manual one for the first time, they really loved it as well. And then they go on to finish with what we want to achieve with Grüne. With Grüne, we aim to create something that's more accessible while pushing the boundaries of what the brand can achieve. First, we want to see the reaction of the people. I think most of them will be surprised. Through Grüne, we hope to bring excitement and surprises to our customers and fans. And yes, it's a beautiful thing, I think. Now, I don't know if Grönefeld collectors are upset about this. I don't think you can be, really. Again, it's like a band with a side project going to do something else. Sure, it's the same people, but it's different music and it doesn't have the label of the main band or brand that you are heavily invested in with time, memories, or $50,000 in the case of Grönefeld, right? So, I mean, I guess I understand 1941 Principia owners, could be taken aback a little bit because this watch does share some similarities. It definitely has that Grönefeld DNA if you were to look at the two side by side. I think that's awesome because I'll never be able to afford a Grönefeld in my wildest dreams. The person who can may be a little offended by that or maybe taken aback. I don't know if it's enough to get too upset. But again, I think we gatekeep this hobby sometimes. We need young people in it. More and more young people are turning away from watches, right? They're going to smartwatches, smart devices. So I think this is incredible. It got me into watching videos about Grönefeld, which I've never done before. And again, I'm never going to be a buyer unless a big windfall comes my way, right? If somebody sponsors my Grönefeld purchase. But, I'm still interested in the brand now in a way I wasn't before. So they at least got a couple new eyes on the brand, and that's what they're hoping for. Somebody gets this and aspires to own the real thing someday, and maybe they can. Maybe they make that a goal. Maybe they sell their business, and that's how they reward themselves. Something like that, So I think it's great. I think it is wonderful for the future of the hobby to get young people in. I'm all for that. I think too often we do gatekeep a little bit. We need the younger people in, man, however they get in. Fashion watches, smart watches. I said before, I got in through my Garmin. I got a little sick of wearing a Garmin, so I got into real watches or mechanical and automatic watches. So however they get in, let's not make fun of them for it, even if it's a fossil, fashion watches. However, let's embrace it. And several other brands are doing some side projects as well, right? Mad One, Max Buser. MB&F makes crazy $250,000 watches. I read on his website, he said, he was creating these very expensive watches. They were expensive because of all the work that goes into them, the watchmaking and the complications. And his family and friends couldn't afford them. So he did the Mad One. And I'll put links to all these. I'm not going too in-depth on the watches here. I'll put links to all the watches I talk about so you can go in and check them out if you're unfamiliar. He's done several iterations of the Mad One now, and they are like $3,500, and you enter a raffle. It's accessible. I know that's a lot of money still, but it's much more accessible than $250,000, right? I got to check out another side project this past weekend. I met up with my watch friend John. I actually met up with my watch friend John and non-watch friend John on the same exact day. Saturday. Yes, it was awesome. Watch friend John brought an SUF Helsinki field watch, the 180, to our meet. We got together, had dinner, went to an AD just to check out some watches, and we brought some watches that neither of us had seen since the last time we got together. So yeah, he brought that. I was thinking about doing this episode, so I actually asked him to bring that watch. Yeah, the SUF Helsinki, they make several colorways. They are a field watch. Now, they are kind of the side project of Stepan Sarapaneva, who makes, again, independent, bespoke watches that get up there in price. Everything done by hand, made to order. Now, if you go on the SUF website, there are some expensive watches on there. They're not all affordable like the 180. But again, the 180 is made in small batches of 50 and really hard to get. They get nabbed up. Occasionally they come up on eBay. I think I found only one on eBay, a gray or black dial, and then same on Chrono 24. Might be the same watch. I've seen them on Topper a few times, but yeah, they hold their value pretty well. John's, it was really cool to check his out. He had like a Tiffany blue-ish 180. We put that and the Grøne next to each other. I would say the Grøne had a more interesting case, just visually interesting. But, the SUF 180 is a great field watch. And, I'm thinking, hey, sub-collection here. Affordable options from high-end watchmakers. That's kind of a neat sub-collection. John already pretty much has that going. He has the SUF 180. He has a Mad 1, which I've seen before. He has Tudor, which is probably the most famous example, right, of a side project. Hans Wilsdorf started Tudor as an affordable alternative to Rolex watches. They were many times incorporating Rolex parts. I mean, gosh, the Tudor Submariner. It even has the same name as the Rolex Submariner, the most iconic watch. Many Tudor Submariners and other Tudor watches had Rolex branded crowns, clasps on the case back. Rolex SA was there. So Tudor now is kind of the wacky side project of Rolex. Rolex doesn't look back, right? They have all these iconic models, but they don't do like heritage reissues of certain watches like many brands do, like Longines does, or even Omega has done in the past, right? They don't look back. They use Tudor for that. So I guess Rolex is kind of like the band that, has a bunch of hits, but when you go and see them live, they play almost all of their newest album, which no one wants to hear. Everybody wants to hear the hits, right? Tudor is like the fun cover band. They will do the Black Bay Pro, which is an homage to the original Explorer 2, right? They'll use aluminum bezels on their dive watches, where Rolex only uses ceramic now. Rolex is positioning themselves as a higher-end luxury brand, and now Tudor is the brand that gets to do all the fun stuff. I love aluminum bezels on divers. I like that they can age and get scratched. I know, again, most people love ceramic bezels. I've sold a few dive watches, including a Submariner and the SMP, in part because, I don't know, ceramic bezels kind of leave me cold. I am liking it enough on the SNR 045, I must admit. But it's not my favorite. Same with like sapphire bezels. Give me aluminum. I just think they look warm. I think they look nice. And again, they can age and get some character. And that's what I'm all about on my watches. So yeah, Tudor is probably the most famous. Then Grand Seiko, I guess you could call Grand Seiko a side project. Then there's a couple brands that probably should have side projects, right? They are the Metallica, who decided to roll with Load and a weird album with Lou Reed, Lulu, and other weird left turns, and just kept the Metallica name on there. They didn't hide, this is who we are, this is the kind of music we want to make. We are Metallica, you're going to like it or not, and that's okay. Or Queen, we're going to do Hot Space. We're going to do the soundtrack to Flash Gordon, and we're going to put it under the Queen banner. If you don't like it, tough. Don't buy it. Citizen. I did an episode last year about my The Citizen, a watch that retailed for $4,000. It is their kind of answer to Grand Seiko. It's been around for a long time. But again, high-end watchmaking, in my opinion. Zaratsu polishing, washi paper dials. They are beautiful. But besides an eagle on the dial, which we affectionately call the chicken, it doesn't say The Citizen. It just says Citizen. So there are a lot of people out there who aren't going to do the research, right? Who get confused because I can go to the mall and buy a Citizen that in online pictures and renders anyway doesn't look all that much different than this $4,000 Citizen. We don't associate Citizen with very expensive watches. And I don't quite feel like they do enough to separate these beautiful watches that I think are worth the money. The Citizen watches are, just beautifully finished. They look the business. But again, many people aren't going to get the chance to see these in person before buying them. And I think you probably do need to make it more of a side project. Write The Citizen on the dial. I think you could do it and make it look good. I don't know that the eagle is enough to differentiate it. Seiko, I think there's a lot of brand confusion with Seiko. You can buy Seikos for $100, $200, and you can buy them for $6,000. The SNR 045 I have, top of the line. Now it's considered LX or Lux, but I don't know that that's enough to differentiate. When people see $6,000 Seiko, they laugh, right? They just don't associate Seiko with spending that much money, especially when you can get an SMP. Now, I believe that the SNR 045 is a superior watch to the SMP 300. I've owned, 3 of them. And I think the SNR is just a better watch. And everything I like about divers anyway, it's subjective. The spring drive, I think, gives it a movement advantage, if you will. Although, the coaxial movements are very good. That can be debatable. But, gosh, the SNR 045 is a few years old, and I've worn it for 3 weeks. This is the longest period I ever wore it for. It did not deviate at all. Did not budge. It was dead on time. And, it's finished to Grand Seiko levels. But again, most people don't get to see these. And online, the renders and the pictures don't do them justice. Don't do the dials justice. John saw my SNR this weekend, and he loved the dial, and he said just that. Boy, you don't get a feel for how beautiful this dial is in pictures online. So, yeah, maybe Seiko could benefit from a side project even further than what they already have, right? They're definitely prospects, Lux. It's still confusing, though. It's confusing to people. When they see an SNR, obviously people know that spring drive is going to command a higher price tag, but sometimes like the new SLA 0, was it the 081? The new Marine Master, that's $4,600. And I've seen people laugh and say, I would never in a million years dream of spending that on a Seiko. I'd rather buy a Tudor. Tudor is just associated with being better quality than Seiko because Seiko has $300, $400, $500 divers you can buy, right? Tudor does not have that. They start at a few thousand anyway, with the Black Bay 54, the Black Bay 58. So obviously, Tudor is going to be thought of in higher regard than Seiko when it comes to spending $4,600. So yeah, Seiko could probably benefit from some further sort of side project. Citizen and The Citizen definitely need to be more of a side project. But I think that's where I'm going to end today. This was a lot of fun for me. It's super fun to think of these kind of out there episodes. Maybe I talked about music a little too long, but it's fun. I love music as much as I love watches, maybe even more. So I'm always geeked up to talk about that. Yeah, what are some other side projects I missed? Chrono Tokyo, perhaps. Send me some. What are your favorite side project watches? Are you an owner of one of the expensive brands? Like, are you offended as a Sarapaneva owner? Or, like I said, a Grönefeld owner? Are you offended that Grune exists? Or SUF Helsinki exists? Let me know. Send me a message on Instagram. It'll be there in the show notes. This comes out as a video on YouTube. You can send me a message there as well. Comment on the video. Tell me what you think. Or do you like Hot Space? Do you like Load? Did I offend you there? Are you Queen fan? Are you Metallica fan? Name an album from your favorite band that jumped the shark or went a different musical direction. How about a favorite side project? I want to hear all of it. All right, I'll leave you now. I'm going a little stir crazy here. I've been recording this for a long time. This episode was a lot of work, but always so much fun. Thank you so much, and remember, sometimes you're the dog, sometimes you're the hydrant, but hey, at least you're outside. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Watch Dag podcast. See you later.